So how do you write internal dialogue? That's why you clicked on this video. That's what you're going to get. Here are 3 tips about how to write internal dialogue that is interesting. It makes your readers want to actually get to know the character, because essentially internal dialogue is one of the best ways that you can get your readers wanting to know the characters intimately. But if you're new here and you love stories and storytelling tips, consider subscribing and hitting the bell, and I'll keep you updated with future videos. So let's get straight into it, because time is precious. Tip number 1 is you should be honest. The most interesting things are the most honest things, because they relate to real life much more accurately. Because in real life it's socially unacceptable to say certain things, but not in internal dialogue. You can write things, thoughts that you've had, that you've truly thought, and when you write them they'll seem real, they'll seem honest, because you've thought them yourself. And some thoughts are super weird. Some thoughts I mean, when you like someone, for example, if you have a romantic attraction to somebody, then you have these thoughts that if you expressed them in real life, people would just think are super weird, but everyone has them, and so it's not actually weird, it's just normal. If you have a character that hates someone, then they can basically express their deep hatred for that person in their thoughts, a hatred that would be totally socially unacceptable to talk about, and so you should probably keep it in your head, but when you're writing it, you can just talk about it. I mean, obviously you can go too far, you know, obviously you can go too far with anything, like, so that it's inappropriate or just offensive, but, you know, there's like a much wider freedom with internal dialogue compared to the spoken dialogue, and it is a really amazing opportunity actually to get to know the characters even better than we know other people, because we don't know other people's thoughts in real life, but in a book you can make it so that the reader knows the character's thoughts, which is so you can actually somehow get to know fantasy characters better than even real people. You can talk about their most deepest, darkest, weirdest, socially most unacceptable thoughts, because then you can utilize the full emotional extent of internal dialogue, which is vast. So that leads me on to the second tip, which is a tip that was inspired by an author called Joe Abercrombie, and he's one of my favorite authors, partly because he's so good at writing internal dialogue, and I really like the technique that he uses a lot of the time, where he has character A and character B, and basically character A and B hate each other, but character A's thoughts aren't revealed to character B's thoughts, obviously, and vice versa. So character B doesn't really know why character A hates him, and character A doesn't know why character B hates him, but we, as the reader, we can see their thoughts and we can know why they hate each other. So, for example, character A might hate character B because they stink and they're offensive to them, so there's a misunderstanding, and character B doesn't know that that is why character A hates him. But character B hates character A because maybe they're being inappropriate towards them. But character A doesn't really understand that that is why character B hates him. And so there's a misunderstanding which causes conflict. And so the reader, as you're reading it, you can see that conflict, but the characters don't understand why the other character hates them so much. Joe Abercrombie does this so much in all of his books, the First Law trilogy, the Age of Madness series, and so if you want to learn how to do that better, then I recommend reading those books, because they've helped me a lot to do that kind of stuff, and it creates a lot more conflict between the characters, which is what drives the book, innit? Conflict. Anyway, the third tip is to use internal dialogue to explain past events. So, for example, you could say something like, Theodore saw the blade that killed his mother all those years back. And so that is just a little piece of information that could be quite important that you can put in internal dialogue. It basically is just a way of expressing information about the world, about the character specifically, so that the reader understands where the character's coming from, their past, what their motivations were in the past, or just stuff that's happened to them in the past that explains why they are at the point where they are today. Yeah, it's just a way of adding more information. And so, for example, if you've given your first draft to some readers and they've read it and they've been confused about something, like maybe something is clear in your mind as the writer, but in the reader's mind it's pretty confusing. I think that can happen a lot, especially when you're so immersed in a fantasy world or story that it seems very clear to you as the writer but not to the reader. And so if the reader gives you feedback and says this was a bit confusing, you can use internal dialogue to explain it more clearly and talk about why certain things are like they are in the story. So it's just a way of clarifying everything, making sure that you, as the writer, are on the same page as the reader. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Otherwise, Julian here will be pretty sad. Wouldn't you? Yes, I will. I'll be really sad if you don't subscribe. I mean, he's a bit sensitive, but anyway. Yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.